don't remember to share what we've went through in our lives, or we do, but then we don't do it for another 4 or 5 years, and new people are around and they have no idea where you came from or what you've been through to relate to you and know that you're a person that they can talk to in that situation. So this morning, we're going to talk a little bit about my story of what I've went through to get me to this point, and then what I've found and very relatable within the Bible to help me through those times. Now, different stories may relate for you and help you, but these are 3 different stories that I relate to and have helped me through a lot of the struggles that I've had and dealt with. So we'll start off by reading back there. We'll have Dave or DP read the first one, 2 Corinthians 3, verses 1 through 6.
Or from you. You yourselves from a letter of recommendation written in our hearts, to be known and read by all, and to show that you are a letter from Christ, delivered by us, written not with ink, but from the Spirit of the living God, not on tables of stone, but on tables of human hearts. Such is the confidence that we have through Christ toward God, not that we have suffered comfort ourselves to claim anything but as coming from us, but our suffering from God, who has made us sufficient to be ministers of new covenant, and not the letter, but of the Spirit. For the letter kills, but the Spirit gives life.
So, just to start things off, this, to me, when you read it, you think about, we are those letters of recommendation for God. And if we don't share our stories to be able to talk to other people, then we're not being those recommendations that He has created in us and what we've been through in our lives. So I just wanted to start off with that. Now we'll go to 2 Timothy, read that one.
2 Timothy
8 through 12.
8 through 12. Therefore, do not be ashamed of the testimony about our Lord, nor of me, His prisoner, but share in suffering for the gospel by the power of God, who saved us and called us to a holy calling, not only because of our works, but because of His own purpose and grace, which He gave us in Christ Jesus before the ages began, and which now has been manifested through the appearing of our Savior Christ Jesus, who abolished death and brought life and immortality to light through the gospel, for which I was appointed preacher and apostle and teacher, which is why I suffer as I do. But I am not ashamed, for I know whom I have believed, and I am convinced that He is able to guard until the day what has been entrusted to me.
So I think it's just important to remember too that everyone goes through struggles. Lots of times we gloss over that. Like, you may be good for years. Some people go long periods of time between their struggles and then they hit a struggle. Some people feel like they're never seeing the light of day from the struggle that they're constantly in. But we all face it. And if you read through that verse, to me, it just tells us that there's a purpose for it. And that's the big thing from what I've realized through what I've been through. So we'll start off with my story, probably about college time. We'll have a different day. I'll talk about stuff before college time. But high school, met my then girlfriend. We dated all through high school. She went to college with me down at West Virginia. We got married as soon as I graduated college. She was still in college. She's 2 years younger than me. Everything seemed fine. I went to church, but I wasn't reading my Bible. I wasn't super involved with anything. I mean, I was a Sunday show up. I was there, and that's check the box, I'm done. And then I won't say that our marriage was ever fabulous now looking back on it, but like there was good times, but there was a lot of struggles and a lot of issues there that didn't realize at the time, but were continually there. And then we were almost 3 years we were married, and we went to Japan because my brother was stationed in Okinawa to visit him with my mom and her. We went to visit him, and the whole trip was very miserable, to say the least. She wanted nothing to do with me. She basically ruined the whole time that I had traveled over there to be with my brother, and my mom was very upset the whole time by how I was being treated the whole time, just being ignored. There was no joy there. There was no fun. To come back, the first night back from visiting with my family for a week and a half in Japan, to her telling me that I'm leaving. Now, don't get me wrong, I knew there was issues, but I didn't think it was divorce point, because to me, I said I do. We're going to work through this. We're going to get through it. So that wasn't even on my radar. And it's one of those that you get to that moment and you're like, why? Like, you don't want to accept it. You don't, because you weren't ready for it. You knew that there was issues, but you didn't think it was the end. It's over. And so we went to some counseling. She asked me to come to the counseling with her, and I was open to, and I come to it, and the counselor asked, do you have anything you want to, is there anything Jacob can do to save this? And she looks me straight in the face and she says, no, it's over. There's nothing he can do to change this. So I went home. I didn't get out of bed for 2 days. Very depressed, stuck there on the bed. Like, what did I do to get to this point in my life? Why is this happening to me? And you just, complete hopelessness of why. Just, you keep asking yourself why. Like, what did I do to get to this point? And the only time I would get out of bed is my dog was still there at the time, which she was special from the beginning because she had lost an eye whenever she was a puppy, so we called her Maya, and that was her name. She was a little boxer, and she was always full of joy, and she would come snuggle up to me, or she'd come over and look over the edge of the bed and say, hey, Dad, I need to go to the potty. And that was the only time I would get out of bed. And day 2 of laying there, Maya jumps up on me, and for whatever reason, I just, clear as day, it's the only time in my life that I can say that I truly believe God talked to me. And it said, you need to talk to Sarah. Now, Sarah was a coworker of mine whenever I worked at Chevron, and we were acquaintances. We knew each other. You work with each other, the schedule rotates around, you work with different people, but out of nowhere, God says, you need to talk to Sarah. And it's where is this coming from? That's why it was such a whoa moment for me, laying there, because I haven't done anything in 2 days. Haven't eaten, haven't gotten up, haven't done anything. And I was just wow, okay. But it's this isn't a person I just talk to all the time, so how's this going to happen? Well, God always has a way. So you just got to let time go do its thing. So since I'd been on vacation during my 2 weeks off, because I used to work the 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, it was coming up time to go back to work. So I pack up my bags, I think the day after that, to fly back to Texas. And we had some for meeting, social gathering, which I hate. I hate those things. That's not me at all. Especially they're always in a bar setting. It's just not me. And so we go to this, and lo and behold, I get stuck. Well, first of all, in the airport, I got a delay with my best friend Jeremy from college. So I got to talk to him about it, which is the first person I was able to even talk to about it. And then we get to this social, and lo and behold, who sits down at the table with me and Jeremy, because Jeremy was basically sticking by my side because he knew that I needed somebody with me at that time. Well, Sarah comes over and plops down. Well, she could tell just by the energy something was off. And after a little while, I told her, yeah, my wife's leaving me. And she's like, whoa. And she was very open and talking about a lot of the stuff that I was going through. It was just nice to have a woman's perspective on what she could even be thinking at that moment. And so I ended up developing a really good relationship with Sarah, and we were really good friends for a while. And I was still always confused because like God told me talk to Sarah, and I was like, but life is getting better. Like I'm talking to Sarah, like things seem good. So I was like, but this is weird. Like, did God put Sarah in my life to be who I'm supposed to marry after this? Like once everything's done, because this is went on. We were over a year and a half of being friends. We traveled all over the world together with other people. That was part of whenever I was in Croatia and Italy and went to Australia. Like, I didn't have my ex holding me here anymore, and I didn't have, the other side of it too that I skipped over was everyone here, we're in Somerset. It's small. Berlin is way smaller. Shanksville is even smaller. And when you go through something like this, you feel like everyone hates you. Like I couldn't go to the grocery store in Berlin anymore without like people looking at me funny, because I wasn't the social one. I wasn't out in the open. I wasn't telling my side of the story because that's not me. She had tons of friends also related to a large portion of Berlin over there. So I felt totally unwelcome. I wanted nothing to do with being in Berlin. Nothing. I didn't feel welcome there. You could see looks all the time, like whispers as soon as you walk by, like miserable. So like I said, Sarah was there. We started traveling the world with other friends and had a great old time. It got me away from Berlin, got me back out in the open. And then I was down in Texas and Houston for training. I went to go to church one night, Wednesday night with them. And this was Sarah's church. She had introduced me to the Church of Christ. I've never been around a Church of Christ. Like we had lots of Bible studies together. She gave me one of the books that helped me understand the Bible more, that led me to getting baptized out in Washington, PA, as soon as I got home one time, because I was talking to her about it. I was like, I need to get baptized. And she's like, you're at that point, like we got to do this. So she knew people in Washington, PA. I flew home, landed at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, came home, dropped stuff off at my house, and drove back to Washington, PA to her friends to get baptized that night that she knew in Washington. She FaceTimed the whole thing with us. It was great. But I still, I wasn't sure, is God saying that there's more here with Sarah, or is she just here for this season? And I didn't know where that was at. So fast forward back to, I've probably been baptized for 3 months, 4 months now. And I go to church that Wednesday night there, to the church down in Houston that Sarah introduced me to, the Woodland Hills Church of Christ down there. And I walk in, and Sarah, true to her form, is always the last person walking in. Everything started 5 minutes later, Sarah's walking in. So I'm sitting there in the area where her and all of her friends that I know are sitting always. So I sit there, and I look over my shoulder and see Sarah sitting there with this other guy that I've never heard of or anything at all. I was like, oh, okay. And this is awkward. So we go through the whole service. Afterwards, I turn around, shake his hand, introduce myself, and proceed on my way through the evening. And Sarah texts me later that night, and she's like, I always knew you were a good guy, but I didn't realize how strong you were to be able to take that news that I've been wanting to tell you and literally introduce yourself and shake his hand and act like everything was fine, even though I know you were pretty upset about this happening right now. And it was rough, because I wasn't sure. I was like, I did have feelings because we became so close. I opened up everything to her. I told her everything that was going on with my whole divorce. That was a safe space for me, because even here in a small town, your family, they still know the other people, and it's still hard to even talk to them, even though you're close with your family, because it's still they know the other families and they have their own opinions, and it's just difficult. With her, it was all clear and open. But oddly enough, at the same time as that was all going on, I had randomly messaged Leah, because when you're in that small town and don't feel welcome at all, we wave at everyone. That's what you do around here. Someone goes past your house, whether I know you or not, I'm waving at you. That's what I do. But whenever you stop getting waves back from people, it hurts. And you're like, why? Like, you don't even know my side of the story. But Leah, whose parents lived a couple houses down from where my house was, drove past a lot and continued to honk and smile and wave every time. So one day I was having a rough bout of it, still going through everything, and I just messaged her and said, thank you for just being a kind person and being that person that still, no matter what the situation is happy, kind, because you may not know what I'm going through, but just that wave and honk got me through that day. And so we had started talking because of that, Leah and I, and oddly enough, her mom says, well, stop just texting on the phone. You're 3 houses down. Just go walk down and see what he's doing. Because I would sit on at that time, I was spending a lot of time in the Bible. I sat on my front porch every night until I ran out of sunlight, and then lots of times I'd go back in the living room and I'd turn the light on and read more. Because how old was I, Leah? 28? And I've always wanted children, like always. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, but is it okay to remarry? Like, should I even be open to this because I've been married? And like, there's a whole part in the Bible that talks about that. And if anybody, or you know anybody that wants to talk about all that, I've spent a lot of time studying it, and we can have a discussion. That's not for today, but like, in my situation, I found it okay to be married again. But you can ask Leah, when she first came up my driveway after her mom encouraged her to come down and talk to me, I told her, like, straight to her face, I was like, I don't want to get close to you, and I'm going to have walls because I'm moving out of this town. I'm going to Texas. I don't feel welcome here. I don't want any relationship because I don't think I could be married again, and I don't want to get feelings and want to be in that situation and then realize biblically I can't remarry. And Leah kind of just laughed at it and said, okay, yeah, whatever. And we kept talking, and eventually, like, I got to the point of getting through my study and realizing that, like, I could get married again because of what situation I was in. And Leah was there for me through a lot of that and helped in a lot of ways get through that and just be the nice person that she is to help me through that time in my life. So that's enough of my story for today to talk about. But what I want to say is, how many times in life do we ask why? Like, I laid there in bed for 2 days continuously, mind just spinning, saying, why? Why me? Why now? Why them? Why? And it's all about our perspective, because we don't see the whole picture. God does. We don't. So we sit there and ask ourselves, and it's okay to ask why. 100%. We should ask why. But will we always get an answer when we ask why? No, we're not going to always get an answer. Will we always get the answer we want to get? Absolutely not. Like, I got an answer. Like, God told me talk to Sarah. If I didn't talk to Sarah, I wouldn't be here and be the Christian I am today, because that's what God put Sarah in my life for, was for that time to lead me to a church, to get me plugged in down there in Texas, which then got me plugged in up here and got me baptized and got me involved in actually reading the Bible. Until that point, yeah, I went every Sunday, but I didn't read the Bible. I wasn't studying. Like, she opened my eyes to that and what it did in my life. That was the season, that was the purpose God put Sarah in my life for. I asked why a lot of times. And I feel like lots of times we don't slow down. We need to. We need to pause and understand that we don't need to know the plan. We always think we need to know the plan. We got to know what the next step is that's going to get us to wherever our goal is. But we don't need to. We need to trust God and know that He has a purpose for us and understands and knows why. He knows why you're going through whatever you're going through, and why you need this experience, why you need this struggle that you can't see the end of, the struggle that you can't see the end of. You don't know, like, how is this going to end? We don't need to know. We don't need to see it. God is doing it for a season and for a reason. I mean, quickly after my divorce and everything, COVID hit, and my one friend from work was going through a divorce, and his ex was not going to let him see his 3 children for 2 weeks because she said that's the quarantine period. But we worked 2 weeks off, 2 weeks on. She's like, if you fly home, you're going to be exposed to people, and I'm not going to let you see your kids for 2 weeks while you're home, and then you got to go back for 2 weeks. So he's not going to see his kids. Derek and I loaded up in the car and drove 22 hours straight from Texas because I said, you're seeing your kids and she's not stopping you. And during that drive, while Derek's going through all this that I've already been through, we had one of those conversations that we may have told our boss that we were going to both each sleep and alternate driving to be safe in our travels from Texas. I think I might have slept an hour and he might have slept an hour, and we talked and talked. But I wouldn't have been prepared for that moment if I hadn't been through what I'd been through in the year before that. To bring Derek back around to where he started to dig in and see what he really needed to do in the next chapter of his life. So you may not ever get that aha moment of why you're going through this struggle. I did for that purpose and that time with Derek. But we may not ever understand it, but God has a reason and a purpose for what we're doing. So for me, when I started studying the Bible a lot, there was 3 stories that I really related to in different ways. And I mean, I've talked about pieces of them, and you guys, this probably won't come as a surprise when I start to talk about all these. But whenever I feel lost or overwhelmed with something, like, I find hope in these stories. And they relate better to you or not. And you may find other stories in the Bible that relate to you, but these are ones that always help for me. The first for me is Noah, going in order of the Bible. And I've talked about the whole Noah story before of like, I preached on it actually, I think, that can you imagine being given instructions by God and said, hey, build this ark, but I'm going to kill everybody else except your family? Like, do you think how many why questions Noah had? Like, we go through our lives and we see a struggle and we just keep asking why. How many whys did Noah have? But he still did what God told him to do, and he still followed through with it for the purpose of what God had created. Like, as I said with the whole, the chain of who people were born by, what's the word for it? The genealogy. The whole genealogy, whenever I was preaching on it, that by the ages in that, if you do it, more than likely there's a strong possibility Noah lost his father in the flood. Like, so on top of you not just losing everyone, it says, no, you're going to keep your sons and your wife and their wives, but everyone else is going to die. Oh, but by the way, your dad's dying too in the flood because within a year of the flood he died, so there's a strong possibility he died in the flood. Like, but why? Why, God? Like, why for my father? Like, and Noah's never going to have those answers. You can't. God doesn't tell us all that stuff. It's not recorded. We don't know. But it's okay to ask those whys, but you still have to follow through with what you were told to do. And in that case, he was told to build an ark to these dimensions for the flood that's coming. So trust. It's all the perspective of what you need to do and stay focused to it. The next story that I really relate to is Joseph. I'm not talking about Mary's husband, Joseph. I'm talking about Jacob's son, Joseph, who was sold by his brothers. If you start reading through that story, the number of times that Joseph could have been like, what? Why? Like, he had dreams. He started telling his brothers about the dreams that he was having. And next thing you know, he's a complete outcast from his brothers. His brothers all hate him. They go on a trip. The brothers are like, hey, let's get rid of him. Let's kill him. So they throw him in a hole. Can you imagine? I mean, let's think about the region they're in. It's mostly arid desert in that area. Getting thrown in a hole, who knows, snakes, scorpions. I don't like either of those. Spiders, I don't like that either. So say any of that's in there. sitting there in that hole for, they don't say how long, but he sat in a hole for a while. Do you think he was sitting in the hole at all saying, why am I in this hole? Like, why are you throwing me here? Then brothers see an opportunity, they're like, ooh, we can make money off of our little brother and get rid of him. So let's sell him to those traders coming through and get rid of him, solve two problems with one, and we'll have money in our pockets. This will be great. So then he gets sold to a bunch of slavers and taken down to Egypt. But he was not of that upbringing. Like, he was Jacob's son and like prosperous family. Like, all of a sudden you're thrown into the fire of being a slave. Think there was any whys during that? Like, why? Like, why? Just telling my brothers the dreams I had led to this? Why? And it continues then. He moves up and he's higher regarded within the Egyptian rules, and then Potiphar's wife tries to seduce him. And he refuses. But what's it end up doing? Throws him in jail. And he's stuck in jail. And once again, do you think he's sitting in jail saying, why? Like, I was being respectable, I was being honorable, I did what I felt was right, and I'm in jail? Like, any of us ever felt in that situation where we did the right thing and you feel like you got punished for it? I mean, I relate to that. If I thought I was doing things okay, and then my ex tells me, hey, I'm leaving you, like, that's, you think you're doing okay, you're not. And until someone tells you, like, you get thrown down the least expected time. But then he gets called back up, and it doesn't end there. Like, he gets brought back up to Pharaoh and is up there with him, tells him interprets Pharaoh's dream, rises to his next in command over everything, and then lo and behold, his brothers come back, begging for food because of the famine that they're going through. But Joseph wasn't spiteful. He wasn't angry about it. He had a little fun with it of tricking them and putting food in their bags and stuff, but he wasn't anything that was going to harm them. He was having a little fun, but also saying, hey, like, I'm going to help you out. Like, I have the opportunity now to help you out. I'm not going to hold on to what happened to me or how you guys felt about me. Like, think about the gravity of that. Like, how many of us, someone who's done wrong to you and like hurt you, to put you in a hole, sell you to traders, you're a slave for years because of what they did to you, but then circumstances change and you now choose whether they starve or whether they have food, and you know that they're the ones that did this to you, and you still are the better person and choose to give them food. Like, I think all of us in certain ways struggle to let go of certain things. And I'm not saying you ever have to. You can. But don't just think about how Joseph had every reason to be bitter to his brothers. Every reason to not rescue them and bring them back around. But Joseph chose the higher path and said, I'm going to do what's right. We have this and we're going to help them. And I think that's just, there's so many parts of it that you can relate to, at least I do, that like whatever season you're in your life, like, yeah, you're going to get hurt by people. That's part of life. It's going to happen. But then you continue on. Circumstances may change. You may have accidentally hurt them. You may have intentionally hurt them at some point. But circumstances change again. And next thing you know, you guys are helping each other because of whatever reason. It's wild how God's plan works and how it all works together. And the third story that I really relate to is David. Think about, you are blessed by God to be, but yet whenever they come to look for the next king, all your brothers get picked. Your dad didn't even bring you out to show you and said, no, that my youngest is the only one not here. We'll call him from the field. No, it's not going to be him. Call him from the field. And David, the smallest, the youngest, the one that all the crappy jobs on the farm get thrown down to, is the one that God actually chooses to be his next king. But then the whole David story of, being chased by Saul, like all the opportunities that he had to be spiteful, all the opportunities he had to, lash back out, and he said, no, that is God's chosen person for now. My time will come. But also there were still doubts there. Like he's hiding in the caves. He has his opportunity to kill Saul. He cuts off his robe and says, no, like I had the chance, like I'm letting you go. Like it just shows you that no matter what circumstance you're born into, he was the youngest of his family. He was the smallest. Even look at the David and Goliath part of it. Like everyone in the whole army is laughing like we've been sitting here at a stalemate forever, it seems. Goliath, the Philistines, over there mocking us all. David out of nowhere comes over and says, hey, I'll take him. Like I got confidence to do this because God's with me. It doesn't matter where you come from or what season you're in your life or where you're at. God is using you for something. Let him use you and listen. David listened to God at that point. Now, the other thing that I want to say about all three of these stories, they all made mistakes too. And that's okay. Even once they knew God and they trusted God. Noah ends up at the end being drunk and passed out, being covered up by his kids because of all the stress and stuff I believe that he didn't deal with of losing everybody in the flood. The flood's over and they find Noah passed out and his kids cover him. That's not exactly a good situation, but it's okay. Like he's been through a lot. He followed God. Joseph, did he really need to needle his brothers and load their bags down and make them think they were stealing stuff and all going to get arrested? No. Was it kind of a mistake? Yeah, could have been. But everyone, even God's chosen people in the Bible still made mistakes even with all the good they did. And I think we lose track of that lots of times that we say, yes, we are all sinners. And we are. But I don't think we grasp that yes, we are God's people. We're doing what he calls us to do, but we also are allowed to make mistakes, and it's going to happen. They go hand in hand. It's together. And we lose track of those being together. And then David, Bathsheba, that whole situation, going down through everything. He made mistakes too. As many great things as David did, still messed up. It happens. Do we try to avoid it? Yes. Are we still going to make mistakes? Yes. But follow the path that God has for us and what he has prepared for us. So, in summary for me, Noah shows us to stay the course and continue to work through and persevere. And you can mess up and still be loved by God. Joseph shows us not to be spiteful. Life changes and circumstances change, but we shouldn't carry the past with us. Today is a new day. Think about that. Today is a new day. And I think lots of times we get bogged down in those bad seasons and those depressions and things. Today is a new day. Choose to do what you need to do today. Whatever happened yesterday, whatever went wrong yesterday, don't let it ruin today. Because God has given you today again. We don't know when we're going to die. We don't know how many days we have left. Today is a new day. Use it. Go out. Do what God is leading you to do and talk to the people you need to talk to for God's sake. And then David shows us that God can use anyone for his glory. But we must stay focused on God because that is where our strength comes from. And the more you study into the David story too, I kind of missed that before, was yes, David was God's anointed. And David did a lot of good things. But there was several times in his story where David kind of pushed God away. And it led to David being captured, David being beaten in a few battles that are in there, because he wasn't focused on God and getting his strength still from God. And we have to stay focused on that is where our strength comes from. We can think that we do everything on our own and, I made this great decision to go do this and it went fabulous. That's fine, but it was blessed by God, or it probably wouldn't have turned out that way. And we lose track of that lots of times. And even as, like I said, as many great things as David did, he still at times his ego got in the way of, I did that, instead of, why is this going on and why did this happen? It's because God was with me. So hopefully sharing my story with you guys was helpful in some way and lets you guys think of those stories or study those stories that relate to you, because I'm not saying these three need to be the ones that you guys go to, but I know whenever I'm having struggles or going through something again, because I know more seasons of struggle will come. It's going to happen. That's part of life. But these are three of the stories that I go to for various reasons to give myself strength through those moments. Hopefully you guys can find those and help you through that. That's all I have. We'll be back in 20 minutes for worship, a little early. Thank you.